type of program. I mean, I knew that, yeah, because Treasury had said if you had ideas where you can get, people together, other cities to work with you, let us know. So that's what I was basing what I said on. Well, it depends upon how they define public services.
How do you define public services? I'm kind of wondering myself then. Because I thought that's what.
See no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil in the back row back there. See no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil in the back row back there.
Why did this house
I'm
flood?
not sure which one's which.
But the biggest problem, I talked to a friend of mine, used to be a water foreman, he's a water guy in Melvin there right now. The thing we come up with years ago was when they built this farming community,
I was wearing his safety vest, so maybe he was out there going into this.
I was riding down Mike bouncing all over.
You were out there, weren't you?
I must have had a whole block of houses, right? How come just two here?
maybe it's elevation or something, I mean.
It's like, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. Back there.
River Road flood back.
No. You know, any course in Wyandotte?
Well, you weren't the speak no evil. We knew that.
Way from that to there, it's happening. Which one? So, where's the water gonna go? There's no room to take it. Sorry about that, but. I remember when I was working, I'd go in there. Go in the back. Well, nothing I can do, sorry.
You hide behind my calendar.
It was sitting there. I didn't touch it, darling. Touched nothing. It was just sitting there.
Look at the flowers.
It was probably the planning commission.
Bush, because I don't think we pick up live bush. Are you gonna plant it, maybe fertilize it a little bit?
Shrubbery?
How big a shrubbery is it?
Well,
How,
Well, maybe they don't pick up bushes, so that's why I'm asking.
If it's cut into,
3-foot sections.
Yeah, that's what I
Can't
was
be-
wondering.
then it has to be
Depending
light
on the
enough
weight.
that one man can pick it up,
Mm-hmm.
tied together.
I'll see if I can get it a bag from and take it to work maybe, yeah, because there's no way.
Well, I'd say.
Well, if it's
you
that
take
big,
down
they
to
wouldn't pick it
DPS,
up.
But I'm told that they don't accept it at DPS, so.
I have a place that can take it to it.
I just was told that, I don't know.
Rumors, always rumors.
Rumors and conjecture.
It's not true.
Bush it is, it would be really hard to chop.
Somebody
Is
was
it
told that
poisonous?
today.
I mean, is it a shrubbery or a bush? It's a shrubbery, is it a nice shrubbery? I mean, was it,
But it was,
oh, so it is a dead shrubbery. Was it dead before you took it out? or
Always
did it
skeptical.
die
People
afterwards?
say they told me that.
It's too big for them to pick it up.
Yeah, I don't know if they pick up
it was
shrubbery.
my
I
son.
mean, they pick up
Yeah.
maybe
After I was
branches
told
from
that,
shrubbery,
accepted,
but
but
I don't know
went down
shrubbery.
Taller than 3 foot,
just the
all
date.
bound together.
It may be wider than 3 foot, but it's not.
It ended up being accepted.
Would it fit into one of those brown
I
bags?
just thought it was interesting.
If you sliced it, would it fit?
James, if we could have the camera, please. Don is on another assignment right now, so. We have James that is filming for us. Hopefully it's all right. Call the study session to review the fiscal year 2019-20 budget for the city of Lincoln Park to order at 6:30. If everyone would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, if we could have roll call, please.
Councilpersons Breeding.
Present.
Higgins.
Present.
Kelsey.
Here.
Parkinson.
Here.
Ross.
Here.
Salcido.
Here.
And Mayor Carnes.
Here. This is the second meeting to, study session to discuss the fiscal year 2020 budget. At the end of the last meeting, I think Mr. Copper, you're asked to give a little more information on a couple topics. So I'll turn that over to you at this point.
Thank you. Good evening. One of the work orders that I was given at the last meeting was to look at the hiring of additional DPS workers and kind of look at what capacity that we have within the budget to do that, as well as look at the, that's why I say this, looking at the part-time, what we spend on part-time to see if there was any way that we could redirect some of the money that we spend towards part-timers into a full-time position. So I put together a memo that kind of outlined what our costs are related to a full-time new DPS worker for the city. And as I listed everything there, you can see that the total is at the high end $62,798. And hopefully I broke it down well enough you could understand what each of the different benefits and costs are associated with that. With that, obviously, then, depending upon how many people you want, you just multiply that 62,798 by whatever that number is, and it gives you kind of what the impact would be to the budget for that. So, for instance, if you wanted to, it would be 125,596, 388, 394. So that hopefully is explanatory. I then looked at the roads and the water and sewer fund. And those are the two primary funds that we pay for our workers out of. I get into a little bit more detail on the road because that's the one I think where there is more flexibility, depending upon if you wanted to spend less for road construction to kind of scale back what we spend on road construction and increase what we'd spend on road maintenance. And the analysis I gave you there, looking at kind of the 5-year revenue and expenditure budget, you can see that as the years go on, we are receiving more money from the state. That number goes up. We start leveling off in terms of what we're taking from our undesignated or our fund balance from the roads. And you might remember, those who were around, that we'd kind of build up this large number of money within the road funds because we hadn't been spending the money on the roads. And so what the goal was to take that down to a level that still gives us flexibility to do things we need to do year to year, and protect us should the state come and say, hey, here's a road project we're going to be doing inside the city, and here's your share of it. So that's kind of how we looked at drawing down those fund balances. And if everything goes as planned, we're looking at the last of that somewhere in 2020-21. So that's the following budget year. But after that, you start seeing where we start having a positive cash flow in the fund. So what my analysis would be to say, well, in 2+ years, we're going to be in a good position where we can look to add a substantial number of people within the road fund. Short of that, over the next 2 years, you would need to reduce the amount of money we have going towards road construction. We're a little bit kind of caught this upcoming year because, we've already committed to road projects and the funding based upon those road projects for our next year's budget. And so we'd have to look a little bit closer at how we're using the undesignated or the fund balance at that case to see if there would be any capacity there. But off the top of my head, my answer probably would be no, but we need to look at that a little bit deeper. So short of changing what we're putting towards roads, I then looked at the water and sewer fund, and the problem, the challenge within the water sewer fund is there really is only 3 different ways we're spending money. One is capital, the other is for the operations piece, and the third is for buying services from other entities, so buying the water and then paying for the treatment. And it really is kind of wrapped kind of tight where if you try, we don't have a lot of control, say, okay, we'll reduce what we pay to Great Lakes Water because, the only way we do that is everybody stops purchasing water from us, which then has a rollover impact that it reduces your revenue. So that's not a good way to do it. Capital-wise, we have a lot of important projects on both the water and sewer side that we're going to be undertaking, and I couldn't recommend that we reduce in any way what we're putting towards that, because again, there's no other source to put money towards that, where in the roads fund, we are doing the bond project, so there is money still being spent on roads. If you reduce the amount from the roads fund, in this case, there wouldn't be any way to supplement or supplant that money. And the third piece is that, operationally, again, it's kind of tight. We have a lot of need related to the water facilities that we have, as well as wastewater facilities. And again, to cut back on that would really mean reducing staff, which is kind of contrary to what you're trying to do and adding staff. So it didn't appear that without raising rates or the willingness to raise rates over what is necessary to add people there. So again, I would look and say, if you're going to add anybody, I point you back to the road fund, and I point you to reducing the capital. The last thing I looked at then was on that part-time issue. We budget every year about $170,000 for regular part-time positions within DPS. We've been spending on an average about $150,000 for the last couple of years. So I think that's a good, we'll see how this year ends up. But that ultimately pays for what we budget for eight positions within there. I think in next year's budget, if you'd be willing to reduce the number of part-timers down to 5, possibly 4, depending upon how it all works out, you could afford to add 1 full-time position in lieu of those 3 to 4 positions that we currently have as part-time. So that's where, if you wanted to add someone, that's where I'd point you to right now, is reduce the number of part-time. Again, if we had all 8 positions filled, we'd have a lot more time spent working versus, going the way of reducing it and having just 1 full-time. Because, again, we budget basically 30 hours per part-timer. So in theory, in a week's time, you would have 240 man-hours there versus what you'd have reducing that effectively in half and adding a full-timer.
But if I may, the reason we brought this up is because we're not able to
Right.
get part-time workers in. I just want to remind people,
Yeah.
we'll see this later, this is why this was brought up, and that's why we have to look at this option.
Yeah, right. And I apologize for not completing that thought, but that's absolutely correct. Is the other side of having that is, if you're not filling those 240 man-hours, you don't have 240 man-hours. You have the potential, not the actual, so.
Get through the chair. The $120,000 get you nowhere on road construction. Those 2 men can be doing a lot of work on the roads. We've just bought a piece of equipment that's going to mean a lot. We have 2 good pieces of equipment that we can be doing a lot of road repairs. That $120,000 is not going to get you any road repair at all.
Yeah, and I
believe if we put those guys on the road, put them to work the proper way, which John said, if he had a couple extra guys, he could run both his machines. Well, I think we should do it.
I would counter with that $120,000 worth of road repairs will make a difference to the people whose road that is in front of.
And people who get their roads repaired, it means a lot to them, and it'd be double than double or triple what you pay for to do the repairs.
I'm not in favor of reducing, amount that goes to the roads. I like the way that it's set up in the current budget. If something wants to be done in the terms of eliminating the part-timers for full-timer, I could see that, but personally, I do not want to see any reduction to the amount that is going to the roads or any other aspect of the budget.
Can I ask a question to the
Sure.
chair? The revenue for the road, from the road bond,
is your microphone on?
yeah, but I didn't have it in
Okay.
front of me. The revenue from the road bond, we aren't going to realize any of that this budget year. It's really just for engineering services?
No.
Is that-
It'll actually be construction. It'll be, the bonds will be sold here very shortly.
Okay.
And we'll be doing construction. Actually, was it the phase two? Yeah, the phase two asphalt that you approved.
Right.
Projects, that's actually the bond money going towards that.
Okay, but we've already pledged, promised, I mean,
Yeah.
that's what,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and again, what I was talking about was the Act 51 money that we put towards road construction. That's what we'd be talking about. We wouldn't be making, we wouldn't be touching any of that money that's for the bond, or coming from the bonds. Strictly the Act 51 money that you'd be reducing money going towards that.
One more thing then, through the chair? Sure. Would it be inappropriate for you to ask John if he had to lose these part-timers in lieu of a full-time, which would be beneficial to his department?
That's why he's here. You can ask away.
We'll ask John.
Well, were you finished with what you were,
I believe, I'll shut up, yes.
okay?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were done with that
Well,
one
there
report.
was, let me, actually, as John comes up here, so I did receive earlier today a question from Councilman Kelsey about the numbers of employees and how they're allocated. And so that's a complicated question, as everything is. And the answer is it depends. There's three different ways this allocation happens. There are three different ways to view allocation here. So we have the financial piece, and if you look at how we pay for employees within our budget, we have some employees that are paid 100% out of the streets fund or the road funds. We have some employees that are paid 100% out of the water and sewer funds, and then we have other employees that are actually split amongst the three. So that's one allocation methodology. The second allocation methodology is, okay, as we bring employees into operation, there's a sheet that I get assigned, and it says this person is a streets employee, or this person is a water employee, or this person's a sewer employee. And so that's the one I'll talk about. The third way to look at the allocation is how John actually uses them. So even though I may look at it and say this person is when it was hired is a streets person, they may be used more in water and sewer than streets. So that's why it's a confusing and somewhat complicated way. But we have 22 employees, not including Dave and John within DPS, and not including the clerical help. And the way that our records have it reflects that there are 6 positions in streets, 5 positions in water, 3 positions in sewer, 2 positions in fleet mechanics, 1 in buildings, and then there are 5 that are kind of spread across all those different operations. So that's how the records that we have view it. Now, I'm assuming that's pretty close to what John is doing. Would you agree with that? And now I'll shut up. I'll let John answer.
Yes, that is true.
That is true. But going back to the earlier question, I would rather have the 240 hours of part-time. There's more accomplishment there. But right now, unfortunately, at Lincoln Park, just like every other community out there and a lot of the industry, nobody can find part-timers. If I had my druthers, I'd rather have the 240-hour part-timers for more accomplishment. I just don't know how to find part-timers.
So this past year, how many part-timers positions have been remaining open?
Right now, we lost 2 in November, and we have not yet been able to find replacements for them. Last Friday, we lost another one because he graduated from college and found a full-time job, and that's great. Now we're down to 1 in the DPS realm. We have 1 that does clean the parks.
And how many were budgeted for last year?
I believe it was 8.
8. And the year previous, of those 8, how many were filled?
I believe that they were all filled from recollection, and maybe Mr. Copper could tell me or Lisa
Yeah,
could tell me better than that.
Last year, I believe was the year we spent about 152,000, I think the number worked out, because the year before that was like 140, upper 140. That's how I got that average of 150. But again, what we have to understand is that we may have had 8 positions, and at any given time, there were not 8 positions filled, because we were constantly, in the last 2 years, I mean, we, if a full-time position opens up, that's the first group that we pick from to fill the full-time. So even if we did have them all filled, I know we hired at least one last year, if not two.
Yes, sir. And or they find maybe something better out there.
So through the chair?
Hang on just one second. Now, when you've heard the discussions reference to the possibility of 3 part-timers and then for one full-time employee. So is that something that you would be in favor of or not in favor of?
My first choice would be the part-timers. My second choice, because we cannot find the part-timers, would be to maybe bring one of those on, or bring a full-timer on in lieu of. But it would be best if we could find the part-timers, but I just don't see that. So I don't want to say a consolation prize, but if you can't find the part-timers, an additional full-timer would help out. But again, you're not going to get the quantitative output from the one as you may the 8.
Councilwoman, you had,
Yes, so we're short, if I'm understanding this right, we're short 3 part-timers right now?
there are 8 unfilled currently. Is that 7?
7.
There's 7 unfilled.
And 8 budgeted for next year?
Okay, and how many full-time do we have unfilled?
They're all filled.
They're all filled for full-time.
Yep.
That's correct.
I don't know, I happen to agree with Mayor, though. I don't want to see money taken away from the actual road projects. I think that money's been long overdue for those. And then that's where we should keep the money that's budgeted for the road projects, stay there.
Is there anything else for our DPS director, Mr. Kazoo?
Yeah, I just got a question through the chair.
Yeah.
We hired 4 people last year, am I correct, for DPS, according to what I see on your thing, Matt? They were gonna go into the roads, I think, am I correct or wrong?
Yeah, they are paid
They
100%
were assigned to
on
go
the
on the
road,
roads
yes.
so we could start filling up, because we were short for the potholes and so on, and roads in general, am I correct?
Correct.
Have we had any problem keeping those employees on the roads based upon the emergency breaks we get and all that stuff, so that those 4 employees kind of, on a regular basis, whether it's road sweeping or something, or is there a bit of problem with doing that because we're short in the other aspects, I guess is what I'm asking.
I would say, for the most part, absent rain events, where we really don't put coal patch crews out, we've been trying to keep 2 coal patch crews out on the roads,
Okay.
especially in the springtime, because it seems like that's when the potholes jump out at you. We do have to pull them if we have water main breaks, or if the water main breaks extend into extenuating long hours, stuff like that. And then also for street sweeping. Because the further the equipment gets away from the yard, the more manpower and equipment it takes to keep it going. But to answer your question, we've tried to keep 2 pothole crews or trucks out there, which is 4 people.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you. Thanks, John.
Through the chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, I disagree with that. If you tell me my road's gonna be rebuilt or repaired in 30 years, then I sure hope somebody's out there repairing my road for those 30 years. Otherwise, it'll be impassable. So it'd be nice if you get enough people out there to do the proper repairs to where you can get another 30 years out of them.
Okay, anything else?
I would like to see create one more full-time position out of the part-time positions. I agree with the mayor, we shouldn't be touching the road money.
Is there a consensus as we move forward?
I agree.
Agree to that.
Yeah, I would
Okay.
agree to that, too.
Is there anything further then on discussion on the budget?
Just further, I guess, if we, wherever we go with the DP, as we go through this, I mean, whatever we put in the DPS has to go towards the roads. If we're gonna hire anybody or part-time, they need to go on the roads. They need to keep, they don't need, and I mean, sewers are fine, but they need to go on the roads on a regular basis, because even with the 2 crews out there, we're way behind. You can tell that just because of the roads. So I think that has to be a commitment from everybody that whatever we do, the roads are the priority till we get caught up, if we ever get caught up. But at least if we're gonna spend extra money, or we're gonna rearrange the budget a little bit, or do from part-time to full-time or more that they go into the roads. If the part-times come in there, they go on the roads, because the more trucks we have out there, we have the new equipment coming, like Councilman Parkinson said, so we maybe, my opinion is I'll go along as long as it goes into the roads, that whatever the council agrees with, if we change anything, that it goes towards the roads, not water, but towards the roads. Thank you.
I'd have to agree with that. Okay, is there anything else on the budget from council? Okay, hearing none, we had a couple of retired police officers that are here and that were speaking to me before. Probably be better said at the public hearing for it, but they're here tonight, so I want them to have their say and be heard. Joe Lavis, retired deputy chief.
Hi, thank you, Mayor. I passed out a packet before. I don't know if you guys had an opportunity to look at this. This basically just covers the police department. I realize that there's other retirees in the city that are affected by this, but obviously I'm more familiar with the police department. Since there were 5 employees that have retired under the city's definition of a full retirement that have not received a monthly stipend for health care. These 5 employees are also not able to purchase health care from the city like the other retirees. In going through, my opinion, these employees that have retired recently made the most sacrifices and helped the city to rebound to the position that it's in now. And while doing so, went 11 years without raises before taking a 5% pay cut. They were paying 20% at times for health care premiums. Many opportunities were eliminated for promotions due to reductions in staff. Our staffing levels at the police department alone went from 62 officers down to roughly 33 officers. Longevity was frozen. Multipliers were reduced. Many employees lost their gun allowances. There was a reduction in our staffing levels per shift. Our shifts went, one shift in particular went from 6 officers as a minimum down to 3. While this was going on, we also took reductions in vacation time, sick time, court pay. We had 2 increases in our pension contributions, with our pension annuities being frozen. The state began taxing the pensions, which a lot of the former retirees had many years of pensions that weren't taxed. Well, all of this was going on through budget cuts. Our equipment was in terrible repair. Our building was deplorable. The employees did all of this while being told that we would be taken care of. Those who stayed would be taken care of. The emergency manager put in our contracts when we lost the health care that there was a line where the city could reopen the contracts to give us a catch-up period for to make up for losing our health care. Me personally, and I believe all but one officer that retired in the last 3 years had 24 years of seniority into the pension that we were guaranteed health care as retirees, and we lost it at the end. We made numerous sacrifices to ensure health care for the retirees, the current retirees, and I commend you for your efforts to increase their stipend, but I feel that a small portion of employees were missed. I did a comparison in the last page of the packet that I handed out, comparing my pension compared to Sergeant Daniel Smith, who retired in 2004. So I retired 15 years after Dan Smith. I had 2 more years of seniority. While doing so, made we had the reduction in staff, the reduction in pay, reduction in health care. His pension is roughly $8,900 more than mine, and with the health care stipend, he receives approximately $16,000 a year more than my pension. I would just ask that that you guys take this into consideration and possibly looking to taking care of the employees that, like I said, in my opinion, made numerous sacrifices to help get the city back on in the position that they're in now. And does anybody have any questions about this? I know it's kind of
Well, what do you mean by taking care?
well, like I mentioned, the emergency financial manager put in our contracts. It's been discussed before about a way to catch up the current employees. There was a 2% health savings program put in, and I'm probably calling that by the wrong name, but the officers, the 5 officers that I had mentioned, I received the most. I think I received roughly $3,800 in my health savings to pay for health care for the rest of my life. The recent retirees have the highest health care costs because most of us have dependent children, so we're faced with the highest health care costs. We're years away from Medicare age, which a monthly stipend would be very beneficial to us. The current retirees, most of them do not have dependent children. They are, if not Medicare age, very close to Medicare age, where the stipend can help with a supplemental. The current employees are faced with, or the recent retirees are faced with astronomical health care fees and are not receiving the health care stipend, or we're also not able to purchase it from the city, which I don't understand that either. I don't know if anybody has any reasoning for that, but my understanding with any type of insurance, the more people that you have involved in it, the cheaper the rates go. So what I'm asking is that maybe you get, as a group, you could look into some way of making the employees whole that had sacrificed, so much and had so much invested. With 24 years in, we had our health care taken from us as retirees. It's completely changed everybody's plans. My wife had to switch jobs to help with healthcare. I don't know, how many people are actually involved in this. This just pertains to the police department. Obviously, there are several other unions in the city that would be affected by this.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I've got quite a few through the chair, if I may.
Yes, sir.
What, did you have a union when this, I mean, I know the emergency manager came in, but you guys are part of a union, right? Or no, the command officers aren't?
Well,
No, when
at
they-
at
when-
the time,
Yeah, okay.
the way that, when the emergency manager presented a contract, if you had the grievance process was him.
Okay.
So when he presented a contract, it wasn't a matter of negotiating a contract.
Okay.
But at that time, it was put in our contract because they knew what was going on wasn't right, and there wasn't, what we were told at the time was there wasn't enough time to get everything rolling, so it was put in our contract so that it could be handled down the line.
Did they negotiate, through the chair, there's been a contract since the emergency manager left, hasn't there? And didn't you guys, I'm just asking, because I'm getting some background. This is all coming up now, and I'm looking at the dates, and I'm going, this is quite a ways back, so I'm kind of looking at a
It's
little history.
been discussed, and
Okay.
it's been
Okay, it's
discussed.
been
at-
discussed, okay. I was just curious, that's all. The other thing is you guys didn't know this when you retired, that you were getting the short end of the stick?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
we
so
did.
even though it happened, you kind of knew, even though it's not right, but you knew it was happening when you
We,
went?
we knew it was, and we were under the impression that it was in the works,
From who?
just through negotiations. and-
Okay, because I'm just asking because, you're coming up from here and I'm just trying to, as a good steward, I'm just kind of asking what's going on because I'm not familiar, we don't sit in negotiations, so I'm kind of asking from my background, whatever, and that's what I was curious about.
And I think-
that probably during litigation for the retiree health care that you thought the matter would be resolved.
Yes, sir, exactly. We thought that we would be included in the litigation, and we were not.
Okay, I'm just trying to get a background here because you're asking us for some kind of support and I'm looking at all the figures other than what you're telling me. And with all due respect, I'm just trying to find out what happened. So I get the whole story from the city, from
Yep.
you, from the union. So that's how we make our decision, Joe. That's all.
Absolutely.
I'm just trying to figure out what happened.
Absolutely.
All right, well, we'll have to, my opinion, we'll have to discuss it further if we're going to discuss it. There's a lot of missing pieces here. I mean, I don't know what,
Through the chair?
Yes, sir, go
Would
ahead.
this be something that would be brought up in negotiations with the police officers currently to discuss health care for past retirees and future retirees?
Well, the unions don't negotiate for retirees, so they would only be negotiating for active members of their bargaining unit.
Thank you.
through the, I guess,
Go ahead.
well, if they gave it up underneath their understanding it could come back, evidently emergency manager superseded the rules, which is what, you're correct what you're saying, but evidently he made a caveat and says, okay, we're gonna take it away, but we're gonna let you come back, even though you can't negotiate, we're gonna let you come back and negotiate. And
thinking.
I'm just asking, is that, do you know if that's any kind of,
Yeah, the language that, I keep wanting to call you deputy chief.
Joe?
I was going to say deputy chief, is referring to the emergency manager put in a number of the contracts. I don't know if necessarily you put it in all the contracts, but I definitely know with the personal contracts, like the police chief and the deputy chief, definitely was in there language along the lines of, in the future, the city may try to do a catch-up. I mean, what you had said was in there. And again, I think it may have been in some of the other bargaining unit contracts, just off the top of my head, I can't remember that for sure, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't in all of them. I think, again, he never laid out what that meant in terms of, well, here's the benchmark for it, here's what you do. From my perspective and what we've been trying to negotiate is kind of, one, trying to stay within what makes sense financially for the city, because we have a lot of different stakeholders we're trying to address in this. The one that was the biggest and had the largest impact on a lot of different parts of the city were the retirees that had filed suit against us. And so that's kind of where all the focus has been for the last 2 years with me on the retiree side.
we are going to be entering, and actually we've started negotiation with some of the bargaining units. The public safety units actually start next year, where we have the command and fire department bargaining units, and the following year is the patrol officers that we'll be dealing with. So those are going to be addressed there. I think that and I've said it to a number of you, that we have this pool of individuals that some have retired, some are going to retire, in a 5 to 7 year window, that again, as Joe was saying, are impacted by the decisions that were made by the EM, where they didn't have a lot of time to, start saving up. I think had they known 10 years ago that this was coming, they may have made different choices in negotiation and all that. But they didn't have that opportunity where individuals that are going to be retiring 10, 15 years down the road, have the ability to prepare a little bit differently. Again, I don't have the answer sitting here today for you of what the different options are, but I think that it is something that we need to look at and need to handle. But there are a lot of different factors with this that in doing, it's not as simple saying, well, if we do this for this group, we're done. It's going to have cascading effects that we have to be careful of.
Well, through the chair, that's what I was asking, because I know most of these aren't commands. So one's a sergeant, so he would have been in a different bargaining unit. I assume he wouldn't have been a private contract like the deputy chief would. Am I right?
I was the only one
Yeah.
that wasn't in the command
Okay,
unit
Yeah, the
out
rest
of
are
this.
all command.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't know that. Okay, I thought it was.
And I
okay.
believe since 2004, from the police department, there's only been, I believe, 7 people that have left with full retirements. So in the last 15 years, 7 people have retired. The majority of the police department has, I would say, less than 4 years on. The senior guys, with the new multipliers and age requirements, they're going to be around a lot longer. So it's not something where there's going to be a huge amount of people that are affected by this. We lost a lot of guys with a lot of seniority that when times got bad, they bailed out. A lot of people stuck around and, were promised certain things behind the scenes that we were going to be taken care of. And like Mr. Koppler mentioned, we're retirees now. We don't have a bargaining chip. We were kind of under the impression that we would be included in with the settlement with the retirees, and it didn't happen. And I apologize for the short notice. Being out of the city, you kind of lose touch with a lot of the stuff that's going on. So, but I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, sir. Is there anything else reference to the budget from council?
I'll get, I guess after we adjourn this meeting, then we're pretty well sure the budget's going to stay the way it is. Am I correct? Or do we have another meeting to discuss it with the residents? And then if there's some changes at that time, or we get some input that seems to put a light on something different, is there still a ability to change it, or is it installed?
Well, we have a public hearing on, which is.
That's what I was asking
for
you.
next time, so.
Yeah, on the 20th at 7 o'clock is the public hearing, and so we would be recommending between, if there's any desire to do anything, at that meeting that night, to schedule another meeting.
Okay.
Two issues that we still are finalizing. One is the budget for the assessing. That still has to be taken into account, so we're still working on what that looks like, so we'll have that shortly to you. And I don't know if we've addressed the DUA increase yet.
That's $372,000.
It's going to be more on the rate side, possibly, and maybe some other minor adjustments in it, so there could be some changes there. And then I know There'll be, in the IT fund, a couple moving parts there, so there might be some adjustments there as well.
So we'll have those before the budget meeting, and
Right.
go over those with everyone, so you're aware of those.
And the question, I guess to the chair, the question I got is, we talked about the Memorial Day Parade next year and the farmer's market. That's not included, because we haven't made any decision yet, but we talked about looking, how do we go forward with that? Is that when a budget adjustment, if we go that way, mid-year, whatever you determine? or-
It would be
If we
better.
go that way.
It would be better to talk about that in this process.
Okay.
Rather than wait. I mean, I think, again, we have a lot more flexibility in terms of shaping the budget if we talk about those items now before the budget's adopted.
Okay, I
I mean,
wasn't
if
sure
that's-
because we hadn't we did a study session, that was it. It never came back up to the council, so we never discussed where we were going with it. So that's why I asked the question before we get too far into it. So do we discuss it now then? Is that what you're saying?
I don't recall what the recommendation was at the end of that meeting.
There was,
was-
there
There
was,
wasn't,
there was a
There
talk,
wasn't. There
there was a
wasn't
talk about how much money, through the chair, how much money if we would give a certain amount to the, Friends of the, Hands of the City for the Memorial Day Parade. And I believe you questioned how much it was costing for the insurance, for the van, for the farmer's market, whether or not, and she was supposed to get back, and we were gonna have another meeting about both those issues. And I guess we never closed it out. I mean, we had the meeting, but we never closed saying, no, we're not giving nothing, or yes, we're gonna see about giving something. I guess that's where I'm
I
asking.
think that we didn't go for another meeting because it came forward that the parade was set, they had all their finances in order for
This year.
this year.
Right.
And that we were gonna look at it in the course of doing business next year for the appropriation at that point.
Correct.
So I think that we're golden, I mean, we're good for this year,
This year's good.
yeah.
Right.
What about the farmer's market through the chair? I'm just asking, because if not, then that's fine, but I know there was a presentation of a proposed budget, and it didn't look like it was good as far as trying to fund it. That's why I asked the question. And if the hands of the city are happy, I mean, or lucky, whatever you want to call it, God bless you, I don't have a
But-
problem with that.
Can I ask you a question about that, though? That, the hands of the city are good for this year, which the parade is, for this year, but this budget is for next year.
Right.
So now is the time to talk about that, so with the hands of the city knows where we stand for next year.
Right, that's what I'm trying to.
Right,
Through the
exactly.
chair, sorry, I know
That's-
side, but.
Well, through the chair, if I may
Yes.
say so. First of all, there is no hands of the city. That is, we never acknowledged it. There is no hands of the city. Talking about the Memorial Day Parade. Let's call it what it is, or the John Dingle Parade. It's a city function. Many, 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 many people come to see it. Many people are involved, many organizations. I think that if we want to waive all the city's cost, if we want to waive the police department, the DPS and whatever, just because it's a city function, then I think that's encouraging for the parade. I think it's great for the parade. I mean, that's my viewpoint on the parade. The Friends of the Market, it's a private company. I mean, it's a private organization. They have a 501c3. They are completely separate from the city. Granted, they said about 75 people come. We have many more people in the city of Lincoln Park that don't participate or whatever. I think they need to generate the funds to pay for whatever expenses it is. But for us to waive those fees for the farmer's market, then who's going to waive the fees for the museum when they put on an event, or, all these other organizations or whatever that put on events, or businesses? We have businesses that get special event permits time after time after time, and they put out all this money. So I'm not really lumping them all together, but the parade is something, it's a city function. It went on for 100 years until we ran out of money, and then they stopped. In my opinion, I think we should waive all those fees, but the farmer's market should pay for itself. It should generate enough revenue to pay for whatever it costs to put on that. And they aren't charged a whole huge amount or whatever. Yes, they have to have insurance, but thank heavens, because then we're covered in case someone trips and falls over there. So that's my opinion.
I happen to agree with your synopsis there.
Through the chair, I agree with the first part. The second part, I don't. The farmer's market's been around for a long time. It's open to the entire city. It started out over here and worked its way over there. It's something that's a community thing. Other cities, the DDA used to help out here for a while, then they couldn't do it, okay? So it's been a fixture in the city, right, wrong, or different for, and I don't mean it that way, but it's been around for a long time, and it tries to help the community, and I don't have a problem with that. I don't know what the rationale would be for the cost of that. The Memorial Day parade, that's fine, but for years, we never did nothing for that. So, and that was a community event that went on. And I don't have any problem waiving the fees for the Memorial Day parade for the policemen and so on and so forth. And we have the volunteers that do it, so it saves us money because CERT comes out there and does all that stuff. But that's my opinion. I mean, the way I look at it is it benefits the entire community. I mean, it's not like they're selling a product to, Beamer shoes or something like that. They sell produce. They help the low income. They do that, the different programs they do for the kids that come out there and so on and so forth. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Through the chair,
Yes, sir.
I agree with Councilman Kelsey. I believe, from memory, on that meeting, we said, well, we'll discuss anything further at the next meeting. Well, we've never had a next meeting, and I think there's some additional that needs to be taken care of for those two events. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I would like to state that being a member of the people who have put on the parade for the last few years, and as a volunteer for the farmer's market too, and I want to make that clear for the public, that I was under the understanding when I left that meeting too, that most of the council, if not all, agreed, waiving the cost of the city's cost for the parade. We're not, we're not asking for anything other than that, just that. And I believe for the farmer's market, the same thing could be done, waiving the city's cost, not paying for anything.
Well, there are a lot of organizations that have events
I
in the
understand
course of the town, and they raise funds for their purpose. I mean, whether it be the Rotary or the Exchange, any events that they hold, that they cover the cost for that and then pay the city for that. Are we just going to be taking one particular group and then allotting this and then not doing the same for everything else that's out there? You're opening up a can of worms with
I
this.
understand that, and I think you'd have to go on a case-by-case basis.
If I may, there was no cost recovery for the farmer's market in the permit that you just did. So the city didn't put out any money. So it was neutral. They're paying for whatever they have to, their insurance, whatever, but they did not have any cost recovery.
I'd just like to make one through the chair, if I may. We have volunteers, and I'm going to bring up a couple of them, CPW and CERT, that doesn't get anything from they get certain money from the city. But those volunteers don't get reimbursed for their gas. They don't get a Coke or a lunch or a sandwich or anything else, and I'm speaking of one of them that used to do it for years. So we get a lot of volunteers at the organizations that don't ask for anything other than what they get through the Community Police Improvement Commission, and we let them use the old court building, okay, for a nominal or no fee, okay? So there's a lot of groups here that do things that have been here for years, and they are not asking for anything. As a matter of fact, they volunteer more time than what it's worth. If you look at the actual dollar figure and you start, we'd have to put cops on the street for the Memorial Day parade. We don't. Why don't we do that? Because CERT volunteers every year. And if you want to multiply the money, what I'm saying is, some groups help to image of the city, okay? And I think the same thing with groups, and I go with Councilman Higgins. The farmer's market's it's not like it started last year or the year before or the year before that. It's been in business for a long time trying to help the community out with fresh fruits and vegetables. And they've done that year after year after year, okay? They got a little stipend from the DDA. When the DDA couldn't do it anymore, they didn't go away. They did the same thing and tried to raise funds. It's just getting harder and harder for people to raise funds because everybody is raising funds. All the organizations are trying to raise funds. We do it all the time. We have the VFW that raises funds, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you know? But I think some organizations deserve some kind of support from the city. They're community oriented. I mean, they don't get a stipend, they don't get anything. And we benefit from a lot of those organizations that we don't worry about. The CPW used to do all the graffiti in the city. How much money did that save the city? We never paid them, not one dime. And yet we would sit up here at council, and I remember Councilman Murphy eloquently saying, we ought to get that thing cleaned up, give it to CPW, and they go out and do it. I'm just saying, sometimes you got to look further than a profit and loss column and look at what's good for the community as a whole when you're trying to build a community.
Yes, but we're talking about funds that we set aside for the roads. We have police officers that are here that are not made whole from their health care, from those issues here. And now we're going to take funds and allocate them to a private organization that has operated for the past, I don't know how many years. Now, in those circumstances, those vendors they're supposed to receive money from the vendors. And they have sponsors that they have that could advertise and such, and the different programs that are there. They have the capability of being self-sufficient and doing it. So why aren't they doing that? And why is it our responsibility to sustain something that isn't doing well on its own?
Well, I guess the answer to your question, I think, is eloquent. Why are the policemen coming up now and not 3 months before or 6 months before? And all due respect to them, okay, and I don't have a problem with that. In the farmer's market, to answer your question, I don't have a problem if we don't fund it. I'm just saying I'm obligated, I think, as a fiduciary of this city, to bring something forward. That's up to the council. It's not an issue that's personal to me either way. I'm just saying the way I look at it impresses and helps the city. If the council doesn't want to do it, that's fine with me. I don't have a problem with it. I'm not going to take that either way, okay? And I think as far as helping, as far as helping everybody, there is a lot of issues in this city, Mayor, we haven't addressed. And because we haven't got to them yet, okay? And we're addressing them as we go. And that's what we're trying to do. And there's only X amount of money. And everybody's not going to be made whole, unfortunately. And that's the way I look at it. Thank you for your time.
Okay. And the officers have been working, not with individual council members we're putting their case forward.
I wasn't aware of it.
With that. Okay, but it has been ongoing. So we can talk till the cows come home, but what is the recommendation here then? Is it that you want to fully subsidize the farmer's market? Is it $10,000 that they're required to have? Is it $5,000? Is it paying for their insurance for their vehicles? What is it that is being requested? What is it that you're looking to add to the budget?
To answer your question, I wasn't prepared to talk about it tonight because I thought, and they presented it before, Your Honor. It was presented to this council before in writing. Mm-hmm. And they talked about it, and we all questioned them, okay? And it never came back to this table so we could get our ducks in a row and start talking about it. Unfortunately, I don't have that paper in front of me. I apologize. I don't have the one for the Memorial Day Parade either. That's why I asked the city manager, is this the proper place or we wait for a resolution? So we do it properly, so we have the proper documentation.
Well, absent that, then what is the recommendation?
If I may?
Councilman, you brought forward.
Yes, I did.
You brought forward this originally.
Yes, I did.
Now, there had to be some idea of what you wanted to have in the way of financing for
No, the idea was, Your Honor, with all due respect, it was the fact that the person would come forward and talk about what their needs are, and as a council, we would decide what we could afford to give them, okay, if anything. That was the whole idea. If you don't bring in stuff in front of this council like the policeman did, nobody addresses it. The issue gets behind, I think I'll quote the deputy chief, sometime behind closed doors, okay? Why do things out in the open? When I brought this up, it was brought up for everybody to discuss, not just me.
Okay, then let me have a straw vote, a consensus of this. Of the members that are here, who would recommend that there be some type of stipend to the farmer's market?
I would.
I would.
Those that would be opposed to a stipend?
I would.
I would.
I would need to know more information because I don't know what or how they got funded in the past. Same with the parade. I do not know how they were funded in the past, so I can't make a decision on that. Do they want $1,000 a year for each event to cover their insurance? I don't know. So I can't make a good decision on that today.
If I may speak, the parade was not asking for any money. Okay? The parade simply would, and I'm not speaking for the group, I'm speaking as an individual who spoke to the group. Okay? I want that clear, although I am the co-chair of the group. But this is not an official, but in the past, the city paid for half the parade, and there was a group that raised the other half for the parade at one point. This is not our group. Our group would be very happy if you just waived the city fees, not charge us, not give us anything. We don't want no money from the city. None of us want any money from the city, to be honest with you. But if you could just waive what would be the city cost, that would be a big help to us.
I would agree to that.
If we're on the parade, I'd agree to that.
Well,
Earl,
yeah, but that's the general consensus for that, but at the point I'm asking for would be for the farmer's market here.
I'd recommend the same for the farmer's market. Any costs that we have for the farmer's market, we waive that. And I'm not sure, I have not seen their books. I'm not even sure if there is any cost directed from the city.
Well, I'm sure that there is a fee that goes with the request for the special events, or was that waived?
This year, there were no cost recovery fees. The only thing they paid was the $100 application fee for the permit.
So that would be it, but they also use the lot at no cost. for
Right,
that.
but we've never charged them for that. There's never been a fee for that.
Then I would really agree with the council, Councilman Higgins in reference to that.
I don't have a problem with that.
Agree.
And then would that be a budgeted issue for you? I mean, as you're talking probably,
We're not giving them anything.
$100 is the only thing they give to us.
yeah, but I'm talking about for the
Right.
for the parade
Oh.
also.
Right. That wouldn't be a big
Okay.
deal.
All right, is there anything further as far as the budget goes?
I think
got a
our
question.
esteemed president has a question.
All right, under the ordinance for the special event permit, you're going to pick this one group and you're gonna waive their fee and still charge everyone else according to the ordinance? I mean, we've already amended the ordinance once, passed a resolution that allowed them to have vendors. They weren't even supposed to have vendors at special event permits. It was part of the ordinance, you couldn't have vendors. Mayor and council voted, passed a resolution to allow that, so that they could bring in the jewelry salespeople at the farmer's market and the hot dog people or whatever. So, I mean, but there's still an ordinance that dictates they have to pay a special event permit, and it's granted by mayor and council. It goes through mayor and council. So you're waiving that for this one group?
I think that in my mind, if I'm allowed to speak,
Sure.
in my mind, that group is helping poor people by allowing them to buy fresh fruit at a very reduced rate, which is something of a benefit more than your average volunteer group. So yes, I think this is a needed thing.
I have to agree. I'm sorry.
What, I would think, though, in looking at that there are enough organizations in town that if they approached for it, that they could get those funds donated. That $100 that they're talking about. The city is supporting them by giving them the location for the event to take place at no charge for them. So it's the $100 is the only thing that they would possibly be looking for funds for, because I don't see us doing the insurance for them, for the vehicle and such, and that was their major expenses. I remember Leslie bringing that forward, that it was some
And I understand
astronomical
they found
fee.
a way of, they have found a way to lower that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So whereas, I'm agreeing on both sides here. I see both sides of that, but I'd also think that, the farmer's market could get that funds from an organization from that. I know that the Exchange Club would be glad if they made a presentation saying they needed it to get that funds, as I'm sure that the Rotary would, or the new JC club coming in would do the same. So I said leave it as it, I mean,
I don't have a problem, and I think I agree with the councilman, or Councilwoman Donna. We need to stay with no exceptions to those rules, none, for anybody. I don't care who they are. And I think that's a quagmire sometimes you get into, because then you get people asking you to pick and choose. And if we can find another way to give them $100 to help them, I don't have a problem with that. That's not worth the, I'm sure, the paperwork or the issue on this until we decide to revisit our ordinances sometime in the future and look at whether we're going to have exclusions for anybody or anyone, for a variety of reasons, because we got to look back, we should be looking back at them every so many years anyways, automatically, because some of them are obsolete. That's my opinion anyways.
okay, anything else for the budget here? Then I will, study session will be adjourned at, looks like 7:33.
Need to take roll?
No, you don't have.
Oh, you don't have to on that?